Since 1944, Citizens Committee for Children of New York, Inc. has convened, informed, and mobilized New Yorkers to make the city a better place for children. CCC's approach to child advocacy is fact-based and combines the best features of public policy advocacy with a tradition of citizen activism. Casting light on the issues, engaging allies, fueling civic discourse, identifying improvements, and envisioning alternatives has helped to make children a priority in New York City.
When CCC started, the whole country was changing, really. It had all come together during World War II, and there was an impetus there towards public responsibility.
CCC stands for one thing and one thing only, and that's children and their well-being. And if somebody like a CCC didn't exist, it would have to be invented.
One learns as a advocate that there's no end to advocacy. There was a passion about Citizens Committee that was never dying, but it was always there and always to be depended on for if there was any issue that affected children.
I am constantly charmed and amazed by the recruits that come through and our discussions at task force meetings and board meetings. This is a very solid and very loyal group.
When you see families desperate, trying to cling on, something should be done about it.
We tried to visit all kinds of institutions that played a role in the lives of the families and the children in the city, and that meant hospitals, schools, courts.
I was, 27 years old, but we went into apartments, in housing projects and in slums to see how people lived and how children were being raised. It was horrifying. As a mother of young children at the time, I was just shocked.
I thought the orientation course was the most brilliant thing that could happen. And there were people who were rather negative about why we should go on with it. Did it really matter? And I did see it from the beginning as the most effective way of enlisting people.
We marched in groups of 3 or 4 with a leader and spent the morning at any of these agencies or neighborhoods and then came back and discussed it. And the bottom line was kids had nothing to say about it. The idea that there was nobody who was speaking for children. And that suddenly Citizens Committee became one of my passions.
I was very impressed, I must say, with the Citizens Committee at that time. And one of the first victories of Citizens Committee was the Sharkey-Isaacs bill to eliminate discrimination against kids of color.
The Citizens Committee was very much involved and very helpful, both on the fundraising and the advocacy. They opened up doors in the mayor's office, in the governor's office, in the city council. And this legislation in New York City and New York State formed the basis of the campaign nationally, banning discrimination pretty much in all housing.
In the late 60s, there were 3,000 families living in welfare hotels. And the director of the Henry Street Settlement at the time was very involved with CCC and Truda Lash, and they decided, I think, jointly to try and convince the city to move in the direction of starting this facility called the Urban Family Center. Each homeless family would have their own apartment so that they continued to live as quotes, normal a life as possible, given the fact that they didn't have permanent housing.
It was a peculiar time for the Citizens Committee because the city was coming into very difficult fiscal problems for the city and for CCC. And there was a very rocky time after the retirement of Truda Lash, who had been there for about 30 years.
For a long time, we were thought of as being an elitist organization, and indeed, we were an elitist organization. The people who are at the beginning said, don't worry about money, we'll write the checks.
Citizens Committee never had a substantial endowment in those days. Rosenwald family always believed that they shouldn't endow organizations. That was their philosophy.
In effect, we were really fiscally bankrupt.
I didn't understand it. It was a nightmare, but I gradually got to understand it, and I thought, either I'm presiding over the death of this agency, but I was still caring terribly about the work. I thought child advocacy was an absolute necessity, like water.
And if it hadn't been for a few people that stuck around and really tried to carry this on, we would have gone into bankruptcy.
Fran Levinson said she would be chairman if I would be president. I said, I'll do the work, you do the thinking, and it worked perfectly because she is brilliant.
We did a number of things at that time, and I think the most important is that we were able to bring Bud Fisher in, who was an exemplary transitional executive director.
Bud went around, hat out, to the various foundations and people, and we started raising money, $5 at a time, $1,000 at a time, and Bud Fisher really started building it up again, directing, and then this incredible board, which was also absolutely dedicated to the mission of the agency.
We were then over 50 years old, and I thought it was strange that Citizens Committee didn't have an endowment. Well, it was discussed at the board meeting that we should have this endowment. Everyone wanted to contribute, and they contributed what they could. And I think it's extraordinary that within a couple of years we raised $1.5 million straight from the board and interested members of the former members of the board.
After Bud came, then we got Gail Nailworth, who rolled up her sleeves and got the agency going in.
When I became executive director, I guess it was maybe 1992, I found an organization with a tremendous history, but very few resources. So at one board meeting, and I'm not sure anybody will remember this, I went around the table and I said, okay, so I want to just do an exercise. I want everybody to tell me what CCC's mission is. And we ran around the table, and there were 50 different missions. At that point, I realized that we had really kind of gone adrift.
The defining moment for me was when Gail became director of CCC. I mean, I think CCC for many years had kind of lost the reputation of really being a strong advocate. And as director of Henry Street, I got to meet a lot of funders and often was asked, what is CCC doing, et cetera, et cetera. I think once Gail became director of CCC, that those questions weren't asked anymore.
We really needed to re-energize ourselves and to really think about what we were going to do to make the organization strong enough to be the most powerful advocate for children in the city and the state. That was the goal.
She wanted to have more flexibility for the Citizens Committee, in that she wanted to be able to jump at issues rather than waiting for the money to jump.
We looked at everything in the organization, soup to nuts. It was important for us to develop our own research and our own monitoring and tracking. We needed to see with our own eyes what was going on for kids so that we could focus on the advocacy.
Our budget now is over $2 million. That's about 4 times what it was when in the old days.
From the very beginning, I've been very impressed. I was very excited by this board, and it continues to excite me. We're becoming an authority in this field of caring for children in New York City. And our influence goes out of New York. It goes throughout the country.
It's impossible to list all of the wonderful things that have come out of Citizens Committee. The quality of the people who have been members of the board has really been amazing.
CCC became my life's work. It was a love affair. And you don't often get in life the opportunity to have a job that you love, that works for you personally, that works for you intellectually, that works for you morally. And that's just what CCC is.
I think it's marvelous, and I think what we've done is much bigger than it ever was before. We've become a force. It's by documenting what's going on and pressuring officials. We're the voice for children.